Hi everyone, we're going to do our first feature today on a case that you may have heard about recently. 14-year-old McKenna Wendell from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. She was last seen, according to Sioux Falls, South Dakota Police Department, on March 13th, 2026. Unfortunately, her body was found a few days later on March 19th in a rural area near Brookings, South Dakota. It was her uncle Mark Milk who was arrested, as well as an accomplice, John Rogness of Brookings, and these charges were filed on June 17th on several accounts in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Iowa. We'll be back to that in a second, because that sounds a little confusing, right? All taking place in South Dakota. What does Iowa have to do with this? But in the meantime, so Mark Milk, this is her uncle. He's now faced with 5 counts. 1, possession with an intent to distribute a controlled substance. 2, possession with intent to distribute a controlled substance resulting in death. The 3rd charge is a transportation of a minor with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity. I don't like using that term. That is what the media used. When you are talking about a minor, you are not talking about sexual activity. You are talking about SA rape, okay? And so moving on, then the 4th thing he was charged with is conspiring to conceal objects with the intent to impair their availability for an official proceeding and concealing objects with that intent. Now, here is John Rogness, and he faces 2 counts. First, conspiracy to conceal object with the intent to impair the availability for an official proceeding, and then also accessory after the fact. So let's talk about McKenna's uncle for a moment. So Mark Milk, her uncle, was imprisoned when he was 19 years old for a murder. He had killed a man named Sean Pineau, and he had stabbed Pineau multiple times in the chest, side, back, face, and then proceeded to kick him multiple times in the head and face. The top right ear of Mr. Pineau was cut off. And he left him for dead in the middle of the street, all alone, to meet up with his girlfriend. And Sean Pineau died alone on that street until his body was discovered at about 6 a.m. in that same morning. So for that, Mark Milk was then sentenced to murder 1 on October 4th, 1993, and then on October 8th, 1993, the grand jury indicted him on 4 alternative homicide counts. So he accepts a plea agreement. He pleads guilty to first-degree manslaughter, and then the other counts are dismissed. Now, fast forward to 2023. Kristi Noem, we all know her. She was then the governor of South Dakota. She commutes his sentence. And that in effect changes his sentence from a lesser punishment. So he goes from life without parole to 240 years instead, which makes him then eligible for parole. And so the Board of Pardons and Paroles heard his case in June of 2024 and granted him parole. Interesting enough, the documents from that meeting show that McKenna was actually present. She was in attendance at that. Not sure, what what that was about. But so you remember how I had talked about Iowa and the tie into this story. So the Sioux Falls Police Department said investigation had uncovered multiple venues, including Lyons County, and that McKenna and others may have been in those areas. But there was no more information about that's been released. In fact, Lyons County Sheriff's Office has said that no more information on its role in the investigation will be released. So we're not exactly sure or clear on what happened in that aspect of it. But it's interesting to note that we have Northwestern Iowa in on this as well. So a lot of what we don't know about this case still resides in that portion, but the justice system has obviously, in fact, failed another one of our daughters. If Kristi Noem, would have never commuted Milk's sentence, McKenna would still be alive today. So that blood is on Kristi Noem's hands as well. It's just another example of the absolute poor justice system we have, that it extends to all demographics, but it hits minority demographics a lot more so, and we're dealing with the Native American indigenous culture, which has been slighted by the justice system for far too long. And so I do want to end on something positive here. I want people to know a little bit about McKenna. And I've got this information from one of her neighbors, who her neighbor was Pat Zimmerman, and he said the following, quote, "I had the pleasure of meeting McKenna. We lived in the same neighborhood, and she helped me find 3 lost kittens. I spent a small amount of the day, maybe an hour, with her. She was so sweet. She had a light in her that came through as her kindness. Yes, she was a beautiful girl, and the warmth came from within her. She has touched my life, and I am grateful." My condolences go to McKenna's family, her friends, her community, who are all grieving this horrible, senseless loss of this beautiful 14-year-old girl who had so much potential ahead of her in life. Just another senseless killings of one of our daughters. If you have any personal, ties, memories, anything with McKenna, I'd love for you to leave those in the comments. We want to celebrate her life and who she is, just as much as we want to put a spotlight on the fact that the justice system has failed her and many, many, many other Indigenous women. So that is what we have showcased today, and I hope that you will listen. I hope you will share this awareness. I hope you will repost the video. Follow me here on my channel for more. We will be showcasing more and more Indigenous women who have been missing, murdered, and any kind of violence that has been brought on to them as a cause of that. So I thank you for listening, and please stay tuned for more information on more of our missing and murdered sisters.